Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. So, Tennessee loses at Texas A&M. I'm sure everyone out there saw the Vols winning their last three games by 27 points or more. What an incredible turnaround for Tennessee. We'll talk in depth about the Missouri game yesterday and certainly how they have turned things around the last 4 games of the season and what that means for their NCAA tournament hopes. Jimmy Dykes yesterday on ESPN throughout the game saying Tennessee is safely in. He said the same thing last year. So we'll discuss, is Tennessee really in? We'll look at the numbers. We showed you some of those bid numbers last week. We'll discuss those again. Where Tennessee sits, about 50-50. So we'll talk about that, break it all down for you. We'll even show you, get your pen and paper, we'll even show you who you need to be pulling against in their conference tournaments this week, other bubble rivals for Tennessee. We get it all started today with this first segment of our show, brought to you by the good folks at NovaCopy. This segment brought to you by the newest sponsor on the show right there. They provide copiers, printers, and document solutions. That is their specialty. But with a free cost of analysis of your business, they can also help you streamline your workflow, reduce your monthly expenses, and make your business more efficient as well. Call NovaCopy this week, Benny Malakote and his team. I guarantee you they will come out and find a way for you to save money in your office. And if they can't, it's a free cost analysis. Don't cost nothing, as they said in Animal House. NovaCopy. Give them a call this week or check them out online, novacopy.com. All right, want to welcome in the guys. We got Jimmy Hyams from the Sports Animal. We have Mark Pancratz from the staffs of Bruce Pearl and Conza Martin. Good to have you with us. Mike Strange, the Knoxville News Sentinel. Former Vol coach Don DeVoe, who won 500 games in his career. Always good to have you here. As I said, a month ago, everyone would have predicted Tennessee would win their last 4 games. It's funny, you go back just a couple of weeks and the 3 most popular words in this town, bring back Bruce. That's kind of died off here in the last couple of weeks. 3 wins in a row, 2 in a row on the road, which is a big switch from last year. Now 4-7 on the road on the year, which is good. You've won your last 3 games by, 36 or 38, 28 and 27 points. Just crazy. Guys, thoughts on UT's recent run of play? You could talk about yesterday, but the last 3 games in particular all kind of run together. They were just butt whoopings.
Where's it been? You wonder a little bit. The defense has been fantastic, and they are playing offensively pretty well. Barton has been a big key with that. But to me, some of the key numbers, there are 2 things. One, the opposing team hasn't been able to get to 10 points in the first 10 minutes of the last 3 games. That's been amazing. Yeah. The other thing is, they held Vanderbilt's duo had 38 against Tennessee and Nashville, right? They had 13 in the rematch. You had the Auburn duo that averaged 38. They scored 18. Yesterday, Missouri's top 3 scorers were averaging 54. You held them to 23. You're doing a great job on the opposing team's best offensive scores, and that's been huge.
The defense has tightened up in this whole run. I think that's that's one of the things that's frustrating about doing a show like this. Because football, you got a game, you discuss that game. Basketball, though, it's up and down every week, so it's hard to look at 30 games and say, well, forget these game 18 and 19. Let's just worry about where this team's going to finish. And clearly, defensively, they've done exactly what Conza Martin wanted. They're peaking at the right time.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the players' comments after the game yesterday saying that this is what Coach Martin's been telling them to do all along as far as the X's and O's and the way they needed to play defensively, and now they're just carrying out the assignments. To me, that means they're finally all bought into the same page. You have Jordan and Jarnell are playing together for one vision. You have Antonio is now that he's back in the starting lineup. He's found a way to find his niche. And Josh Richardson, like Jimmy had talked about defensively, has made a footprint on this basketball team with the way he's defending. And it's impressive the way these guys have stayed together and battled and now are just dominating opponents the way they are.
Let me put up some numbers before I get to Mike and Don. I want to ask you about Antonio Barton. This is a comparison of what he did the last 3 games. Look at this, 51 points in his last 3 games. He also scored exactly 51 points in his previous 11 games. From about mid-January through the end of February, he had 51 points and 23 assists over that 11-game period. If you have 51 and 11, you see the average has gone from 4.6 points per game to 17. The assists up almost 2 to 1. We've ridden him pretty hard this year. I know I have, in terms of not being the Trey Golden. You lost more than you gained. The last 3 games, that has changed. How big of a difference has Antonio Barton made on this team?
Well, you can't overestimate it, I don't think. You look at these last 3 games, Jordan McRae has not, scored, 11, 13, 9 points, something like that, all these last 3 games. It's because Antonio Barty's not only making shots, but as Conzo said yesterday, his whole floor game, the ball's just moving really well, and everybody's involved. They're going inside out. Some of his 3-pointers are coming off, going into Jarnell, kicking it back out, and just this offense just looks a whole lot better.
And Don, I want to talk to you about Jarnell Stokes, because we were talking about him before the show started. During non-conference games, 14 points, 9 rebounds. Not a bad average. In SEC play, 15 points, 11 rebounds. In other words, he's better now than he was when they were going up against some of the weaker teams on their schedule this year. Jarnell Stokes has just turned into a beast here in the SEC schedule, I think. Don, your thoughts on his performance?
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Nobody that I've seen him play against recently wants anything to do with him. Teams are being told double down. Hey, nobody wants to double down on him. He's big. He's going to hurt you. I watched these last few games very closely, and that's the respect that he is getting inside now. And he's a very good passer. Yesterday he made some great passes, out of what was attempted as double teams. Teams really don't want to have anything to do with him, and of course Tennessee is shooting the ball so well, as everybody pointed out. But it's lockdown defense right now for this Tennessee basketball team. Richardson is just absolutely doing a great job. Maimon inside is doing a great job. We don't have shot blockers on this basketball team, so the perimeter players have to keep the driving teams out, and that's what is so difficult in the college basketball, is to keep people from driving the ball. And Missouri is a great driving team, but yesterday they couldn't penetrate enough, and of course they couldn't knock down any shots. I think they were one time 1 for 8 forever in this basketball game from 3-point range, but it all starts with the great defense the guys are playing, and again, Stokes is just owning everybody inside. He's just really blossomed. I'm really happy for him.
You talk about Josh Richardson. Well, that's another young man that when he signed with Tennessee and started, a lot of people said that's not an SEC caliber player. There aren't many teams that wouldn't start a Josh Richardson at this point, the way he's playing. We talked earlier in the season. Yes, Maimon and Stokes were big, but teams with height still were giving Tennessee trouble. That no longer looks to be as big an issue because of it appears that Stokes and Maimon have become more physical inside, and that's kind of counteracted the height issue. Agree or disagree?
I agree, but they're also using them differently. And Jarnell's development, not only his touch, and you see him making more of those run and jump hooks now, but his patience. And I think it boils back down to the point that he knows now that he's going to get the ball back because we're playing inside out. Whereas before, if he would get it, he had to force it because he didn't know when he was going to get the ball back. And so moving him around in different spots, him being patient, and then ultimately he's just become relentless on the offensive rebounding, and that's where he's getting a lot of his points. And so the height issue isn't as big of a deal. It's the inside-out portion that has been a huge impact.
Jimmy and Mike, I'll let you guys close down this segment with quick thoughts.
We're talking about defense. I think we'd be remiss not to mention Armani Moore and what he's bringing off the bench. When Don talked about keeping that penetration, I don't know how many times in the last couple of games I've seen that guard want to drive in there and Armani be in front of him, and the guy had to circle back out.
And I think the big men have done a better job with the pick and roll on the top. They're not allowing the guards to penetrate out there either. But this has been a very cohesive team, and in my opinion, their last 3 wins, and they've averaged 31 points in those 3 wins. They're playing like a top 25 team. Yeah. They're definitely playing like an NCAA tournament team. Now, whether what happened earlier is going to be good enough to get them in remains to be seen. But right now, they look like an NCAA tournament team.
The irony is, if you beat Texas A&M, just in one of those games, you still finish 3rd in the SEC, and you're exactly where everybody predicted before the season. You're exactly. I mean, they were not a preseason top 25, so you'd be just outside that cusp, but you would be 3rd in the SEC. Instead, they finished 4th. So you could make the case they're one game worse than would have been projected back in August by most of the preseason prognosticators.
And John, I think if they had beaten A&M once, or in particular twice, there's no debate they'd be in the tournament.
I agree with you. All right. We'll talk about tournament resumes and teams that Tennessee needs to worry about on the bubble when the Sports Source rolls on. Come on back.